What if I told you that every authoritarian regime, every corrupt system, every brutal status quo in the last 100 years could be cracked wide open by less than 4% of the population? That's not fancy. It's math. It's history. It's the 3.5% rule. Now, TikTok may have just found it, but tonight I'm going to unpack it. Welcome to the Beard Signal. I'm JP Dunphy, and we're about to break the spell. First and foremost, where did that 3.5% rule come from? So back in 2008, a political scientist named Erica Chenoweth started researching the effectiveness of nonviolent movements, honestly, as a skeptic. She believed that peaceful protest was noble but weak, realistic but ineffective. But then the data came in. So she and a fellow researcher, Maria Stefan, studied 323 major resistance campaigns from 1900 all the way to 2006, ranging from civil rights to revolutions. And what they found blew the doors off conventional wisdom, which was that nonviolent movements were more than twice as effective as violent ones. Twice. And that's the headline. Every single movement that has reached 3.5% participation has never failed. Not sometimes, not most, every single one. So this is the 3.5% rule, and it should be engraved in every protest sign in America. Now, let's be clear. This does not mean that hitting 3.5% automatically makes you win. It means that in over a century of real-world examples, those who sustained that number and did so non-violently cracked the system. The message is that you don't need a majority. You need momentum. And that's a damn good plan. Fast forward all the way to 2025. And this old academic theory has now found a second life on TikTok. Hashtags like hashtag 3.5% rule, hashtag protest math, and hashtag Gen Z resists explode in June. Over 240 million views combined on this. Now, young creators are taking clips of Erica Chenoweth, layering them over protest footage, anime edits, activist memes. And the hook is simple. We don't need everyone. We just need enough of us. And honestly, that's powerful. It's also dangerous because the algorithm doesn't do nuance, right? TikTok can make the 3.5% rule look like a hack, a cheat code, or a silver bullet. But what it really is a threshold, not the end, the beginning. All right, so let's just look at where this theory actually worked. Not just in theory, but in history itself. So the Philippines, people power, back in 1986, literally when I was born, 1986, over 2 million Filipinos took to the streets in Manila. They represented about 5% of the population, but within days, the dictator Ferdinand Marcos, who'd ruled for over 2 decades, was forced to flee the country. Not a single shot fired, no civil war, just sheer people power. Now, in Serbia, Otpor, a decentralized youth movement full of graffiti, memes, and sarcasm, Otpor mobilized over 3% of the population against Milosevic, who rigged elections and ruled in fear. The movement kept it fun and relentless. And Milosevic, gone. Sudan, back in 2018-2019, women led sit-ins. Students organized strikes. The population pushed past 3.5%. The dictator, Omar al-Bashir, was deposed after 30 years of power. All right? The world barely noticed, but Sudan's people knew what they did. Tunisia, the Jasmine Revolution back in 2011. One fruit vendor set himself on fire. That act sparked a reaction that saw over 3.5% of Tunisians protest in the streets. The president resigned, and the Arab Spring began. The through line here, no one was waiting for permission. No one waited for a majority opinion. They acted when the minority was loud enough, committed enough, and disciplined enough to break the spell. But what about here at home, right? Black Lives Matter back in 2020 through 2023, roughly 7% of US adults, about 20 million people, attended BLM protests, and it was the largest movement in US history. It changed policies in cities across the country, influenced corporate culture, shifted national dialogue. But it also exposed something crucial, which was mass participation is necessary, not sufficient. Sustained structure and political leverage is the next step. Things like Occupy Wall Street, brilliant branding, vital message, no structure. The movement fizzled out not from a lack of passion, but from a lack of direction. Now you also have, just recently, the No Kings protest in 2025. 3 million people rallied in 46 cities after Trump federalized the National Guard without consent. Now that was roughly 0.9% of the country. It shook the establishment. Now imagine what happens when that number triples. All right, so let's talk about 3.5% and what it actually looks like here in the US. Now, with a population of 332 million, that's about 11.6 million people. Everyone in New York City and Phoenix in the streets, not for one day, but sustained action is what that means. All right. City level mobilization, walkouts, sit-ins, marches, shutdowns. You can also have general strikes, work stoppages with political demands, boycotts, like corporate economic disruption. That's already been happening since the start of this administration, frankly, going against all these massive billionaires that are out there and their actual things. So like Amazon strikes, Walmart strikes, all these various strikes across the country. And it made a little bit of an impact. Did it make enough of an impact? Still yet to be seen, but it made an impact. Then you also have cross-issue alliances like labor, climate, racial justice, reproductive rights, and anti-authoritarianism. You don't need to agree on everything. You just need to agree that the current system isn't working, and it's time to make it ungovernable. So you might be asking what this 3%, 3.5% will look like in real life. All right. So you don't need millions of people all in DC. You just need 1,000 people in 1,000 cities. Maybe it's 800 in Kansas City doing a sit-in, 2,000 in Philly striking their Amazon warehouse, 4,000 students walking out of schools in Texas. We win when power of participation ripples across the spectrum. We win when the cost of ignoring us becomes higher than the cost of change. Now, here's the thing. Governments do push back. If we know this rule, believe me, so do they. And that's why governments are already building barricades. Things like anti-protest laws, all right? 41 U.S. states have passed or proposed bills since 2023 to criminalize protests, which, by the way, is completely against the First Amendment. So go fuck yourself on that, guys. But some make it a felony to block traffic, which I don't fully blame them on that one, honestly. But some let drivers actually hit protests with no legal consequences. Looking at you, Florida. That's fucked up. Obviously, if you're in fear for your own life, that is, of course, a caveat to that law, but still. It sort of makes some people actually go looking for it and then use that as the justification. So there's always people that are going to find weird loopholes and try and make it work for themselves. So you obviously have to look against that. There's also been a push for digital surveillance, so facial recognition, TikTok data scraping, social media scans. Organizations are being flagged before they even meet. Then there's also corporate interests. So fossil fuel companies have funded laws criminalizing protests near pipelines and what they deem as critical infrastructure. You know, they're protecting profits, not people here. Let's just be completely honest and call it what it is. Another one is, of course, militarization, the federalization of the National Guard in LA. That wasn't about safety. That was the message. Stay in your place. Our message is go fuck yourself, which is what it should be. You know, that's kind of against the law to do that. You know, the military can't be used to aid in state shit. You know, period, the end. Unless there is federal law that is being broken in the time, and you can't create federal law out of whole cloth. There has to be actual legislation for it, which they haven't done. They're trying to, but but it hasn't been happening yet. Another option is, of course, global suppression. So from India's internet blackouts to UK's noisy protest ban, authoritarian tactics are going multi-international. But out-organizing the crackdown is kind of important here. So the main thing here is, how do we push back? Frankly, you had to be decentralized. So you can't arrest a movement without leaders if everyone leads locally. There's also digital security. Use Signal, use Proton Mail, encrypt group chats. Know your rights. Teach each other. There are books on this. Know your rights. Legal defense funds. Every protest should include jail support. Every single movement needs bail money ready. Another thing is, of course, joy. Always joy. Make sure to laugh, dance, sing, and hope is the most rebellious emotion in the world. So, strategical blueprint: disrupt, delegitimize, disinfect. That is the proven framework. Disruption: shut down systems until inconvenience becomes unbearable. Delegitimization: expose lies, corruptions, and hypocrisy and make it shameful to support the regime. And defection: pull insiders out. From cops to bureaucrats, defectors crash the system from within. That's how regimes fail. Not in a tweet, in a strategic escalation. So this one's a quick one. I don't want to overload with any of this stuff, but just know that at the end of this, you don't need to be everyone. You just need to be one of the 3.5%. This is a moment. History won't ask how many followers you had. It will only ask if you follow through. First things first, share this episode. Join a local group tonight. Organize one act of disruption in the next 30 days. 11 million isn't unreachable. It's just unignorable. I'm JP Dunphy. This is the Beard Signal. And remember, the louder we get, the stronger this signal, the harder it is for these shitheads to rule.